Who's your emergency contact? Who should we notify in the case of death? Welcome to the USP, where I've spent the last 2+ decades of my life. Now I'm currently in Florence, USP. I've been taking you guys through the course of my journey, starting out from the county jail to Lompoc, and so on and so forth. You know, everywhere I've gone, everywhere I've been, everybody has their policies. Everybody has rules that they expect everybody else to abide by, for the simple facts that these policies, these rules that we have in place, is in place to help us keep the peace, to help us, keep the drama, to minimize the drama as much as possible. Of course, even with these regulations, even with these rules that we ourselves put on ourselves in our community behind these walls, there's always going to be someone that deviates from that. There's always going to be somebody that thinks they're above the rules, or that they're smarter than everybody else and they'll be able to get away with it. Well, I repeated over and over again, the penitentiary it's like high school without the girls. High school meaning there's no secrets. There's always rumors floating around. We like to, it's almost comical, because you get dudes that are so quick to talk about, oh, these girls over here, they gossip like a bunch of old ladies, this and that, but they do that themselves. They're in the penitentiary gossiping, just like a bunch of old ladies. So anything that happens in the penitentiary doesn't stay quiet. Unless you're the only person that knows about it. Because once you let something out of your mouth, once you verbalize your thought to another person, then it's only a matter of time before anybody and everybody that matters and whatnot is going to hear about it. Because everybody has a best friend. Everybody has a homie that they feel like they can trust with whatever it is that they're trying to share. Hey, so-and-so told me this, don't repeat it, and so on and so forth. So everybody gets the same, starts receiving the information with the same, headline. Hey, don't repeat this. But of course, no one keeps anything to themselves. So if you're doing something that's fucked up, if you're doing something that you're not supposed to be doing outside the regulations and the rules that are placed upon you, then you need to keep that shit to yourself. Because if you don't, it's going to get exposed, and then you're going to have to deal with the consequences. Now, one of the rules and policies we have in place is that we don't sell knives to other races. Now, just to be honest with you, I've sold knives to other races, but not as a hustle. I mentioned to you my friend Castro from Dallas. When we was in Beaumont, he worked, when he was on the street, he worked at the post office. And at the time we was in Beaumont, the post office sent him a $27,000 retirement check, whatever he saved up during the 7-8 years that he worked at the post office. So when he got $27,000 in prison, he just went on a party spree. He went on a binge. He bought all the dope, all the liquor, or whatever. And at this particular time, I had dropped my knife in the back of my locker. So I had one of my friends come in that work in CMS. They have all the tools and stuff to take the lockers and stuff off the wall. So they come and take the lockers off the wall. I retrieved my knife, but I also found another one. And the one I found, that shit was like the length of my forearm. That shit was like a sword. I'm a little guy. There's no way for me to hide that walking around. So, and I fucked with Castro. So I went over there and offered Castro. I said, hey, what's up? I pulled the knife out of my pants, showed it to him. It was literally about this. It was the size of my forearm. So It was pretty big and thick. So I asked Castro, I said, hey, you want this? He's like, hell yeah. I said, give me 7 books. So I sold it to him for $35. But later on that night, he ended up pulling that knife on a white dude at the poker table and called the white dude bitches and all sorts of shit or whatever. And long story short, my buddy Castro didn't get him smashed out for it. He didn't get X'd out or anything, but just the politics, they had to hold him accountable for that, or it was going to cause a racial war. So instead of causing a racial war, and Castro was in the wrong, they ended up stomping him out, and he left the yard. But, you know, he didn't get X'd out as far as, like, he wasn't fucked up or anything like that. That's just the policy. Sometimes you gotta do things that you don't want to because one of your homies fucked up, but because if you don't, it can lead to something more drastic. And the homie Castro knew about it. He didn't run up or anything. He knew he had it coming, and he took it. And that was the end of it. He went to Pollock. He was still in good standing. And then I ran into him again in Florence, USP. Now, I shared that story on a prior episode, but I only mentioned that to emphasize that there's certain rules that when you break them, you're going to be held accountable for them. Regardless of how many homies you got, regardless of how much the homies around you love you and respect you, when it comes to certain things, it's, a choice between dealing with your own or wrecking with the other car and potentially get all your people hurt or killed. But dudes that are on man time, all of us fuck up. I don't give a shit who you are, especially if you're somebody's in the penitentiary. That we already been raised a certain way out here. We've already justified certain actions in our mind out here. So those habits are hard to break when we go into the penitentiary. Even though we're getting a first-hand course on how to conduct yourself with the threat that it might mean your life if you deviate from it, some hard habits are hard to break. And people that are on man time, good dudes, we all fuck up too. But the difference is when a man fucks up, like my man Castro, he understood what the repercussion is. He understood what he got coming. He didn't run scared, go check in because he was afraid he was going to get stomped out or stabbed. He knew he fucked up, but he also knew that he still had 20 plus years, he had like a 40-something year sentence to do. And at this time, he's only been down 5 or 6 years. So he already knows he still got 30 years to do. And accepting responsibility for what you do, accepting your punishment, helps go a long way in keeping your credibility, right? But some people don't carry it that way. Some people know when they fucked up, they're trying to avoid that punishment and they're gone. So when we get to Florence, I told you the political structure in Florence as far as the whites go is the ABT. That's the Texas Aaron Brother. They're the biggest gang in Florence. As far as the Mexican go, it's the TS and the Texas MA. Everybody else, every other Mexican that comes on that line, unless they're on the TS or the Texas MA count, where they're affiliated or friends of, if you're not associated with that group, then you're considered a Solano, which is solo, meaning you're running by yourself. You don't have anything to do with the politics. You don't have no saying on the TV, the tables, any of that. You're pretty much dictated, your actions or whatever is pretty much dictated by the TS. But you, as a Solano, are under the same scrutiny and politics that the rest of the prison is. But somehow, you always get a couple individuals that feel like they can deviate from what is expected of them. So they had these two dudes. One of them was from New Mexico and the other one was from Denver. The guy from New Mexico was a real light-skinned Mexican with thick glasses, bald. He called himself Ghost. And he was pale like a ghost, so I guess the name fits. The other guy is from Denver. They call him G-Gun. At first, when he told me his name, I was like, huh? Because, I mean, the reason is that if you see this dude, he's like a pudgy little Mexican dude, goofy. For me, just observing, I didn't see any G in there. But, you know, I don't know what that man is capable of. My opinion is only from what I observed while I was there in the unit with them. Well, it turns out, it came to light that they were making knives and selling it to other races. You see, like, I've been in position, like, through the course of my time, I've sold one knife to another race. That was Castro, my buddy from Dallas. And another time, I gave a knife to a friend of mine, a black guy, because he asked me for it. But these two individuals that I dealt with were people that if they got into a situation and they were right there with me or I was around in the vicinity, I would without a doubt come to their assistance and vice versa. I've had white guys, I've had Mexicans, I've had blacks. When they see me in a situation or something, they come and offer their assistance. You know, maybe not, hey, I got your back, what you want to do? But at the very least, like, what's up, you good? You need something? And I'm like, yeah, I need a piece. You know, they don't hand it directly to me. They're like, all right, under the stairs, around the corner, and whatever, I got one stash. Or out in the yard, over here on this court, on this field, under this rock, by this branch, I got one over there. You know, they're never handing it to me directly unless it's an emergency or whatever, but that I've never been in. I've never been in an emergency where I had to go and somebody hand me a knife. But my friends, these people that I have built rapport with outside of my Asian Islander car, they have knives and stuff stashed out throughout the unit, throughout the yard. And they've always been like, hey, look, if you ever need something, I got it over here, I got it over there, so on and so forth. You know? So, but at the same time, when these people offer me this love and this respect by putting themselves in harm's way by assisting me, because there people find out that they gave another race a knife, depending on their rank and the reason, it might be, you know, debatable or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's a no-no. So these people that come and offer me these things, they're putting themselves at risk. So in return, it's my responsibility to never mention it to anybody. Not my best friend, not my Sally, not my homie, and not my wife. Yeah, we're on the phone, I'm talking, but those things are not to be mentioned because when these guys show me this love and this respect, I have an obligation in return to protect them. Because if it word got out that, oh, Mason went, oh yeah, did you hear what Mason said? Mason said so-and-so that was black or so-and-so that was Mexican, white, whatever, that's another race. Mason said so-and-so gave him a knife. Yeah, I might confine it to somebody that I feel like I can trust, but like I said, that guy's got somebody that he can trust, that he feels he can trust, so on and so forth, and eventually it's going to reach the ear of somebody that is not supposed to have heard it. And then now, the person that helped me out, that was showing me love, showing me respect, I in turn, indirectly, because I run my fucking mouth, put him under the bus. And he might get chopped up, and he might lose his life for it. This shit is serious, because we're all enemies behind the line. It's fucked up, but that's the way it is. All these gangs in there don't like each other, don't get along, but because of the situation that we're in, has come to an agreement, you know, like a steady truth. So we live in a hostile environment. So if you're aiding and assisting another race by providing them weapons, knives or whatever, your people is gonna look at you like, nah, homie, that's not acceptable. And gonna bust your fucking head. Now, so it comes back that these dudes were selling knives. These dudes, they're addicts. So, with addicts, they're hustling, whatever, to support their habits. And then when the hustle gets thin, they're going to find other ways to get their money. And one of the ways to get money is sell knives. That stuff will sell all day. All you got to go do is break off a piece of metal or cut up a piece of metal, sand it down. It's a lot of work, but what else are you going to do? You're doing time, right? So, but like I said, eventually everybody gets found out. And the people that these two dudes were dealing with obviously didn't have respect for them, or their business wouldn't have been put out, or their business wouldn't have been brought up to the people that was overseeing them. And the person that the stuff was brought up to was my buddy Rudy. He's from the Texas inmate. So Rudy comes to me and tells me, hey, you might want to get your shower, get your hot cup of coffee, because we might be going on lockdown because we just found out that these two fucking dudes been selling knives to other races. And when I say other races, they could have been selling to blacks, whites, natives, whoever. But the person that came and hit Rudy to what was going on was a black dude that happened to be somebody that Rudy knew. And that guy knew that these coups were in violation. Whatever particulars, why he said something to Rudy or I don't know anything about that. That wasn't mentioned to me when we were having this conversation. The only thing that was being told to me was that these dudes gonna get handled. So on this day, when we come back, it's right before count time. Now there's cellies, G-Gun and Ghost. They're cellies. So when they come back in, half the unit knows what's going on already or what's about to go on. So, including me. So I find myself it's not like I want to be in the business, but I know about it. And where I sit in my room, where I sit at my table in my cell, I'm in 122 downstairs. Right to my right, upstairs, coming off the tier because the tiers is a triangle. It goes this way, that way, and back. So I'm on this row right here, but the guys in question, they live on the other side upstairs. So from where my table is, I can see their cell. But it's recall, so everybody's coming in back off the yard. And just because I already was hip to the information, I find myself just observing and watching these two dudes. Well, they closed the movement, and the only one that came back was G-Gun. Ghost never made it back. We waited to see if he was late for the movement or whatever, but when they closed the movement, there's only going to be about maybe another 30, 40 minutes before they lock us in our cells for a 4 o'clock count. So only G-Gun come back. Ghost never came back. So when they discovered that Ghost wasn't returning, because they didn't have like a set time of when they were gonna punish these two dudes. But what happened was Rudy went and brought it up to the TS. So the TS went and told the Solanos to go deal with it. Because at the same time these dudes are Solanos, they still want them, they don't want to be wasting one of their soldiers and dealing with the fuck up of these dudes. So they usually make the other Solanos deal with it. But I guess whoever they approach or whatever, the other Solanos, they were like, man, we're Solanos. We don't have anything to do with the politics. We don't want to get involved. So that, but at the end of the day, this needs to get dealt with. So Rudy and his homies, they nominated one of their brothers, name is Razor. He's out from Texas too. And another youngster out of Texas named Dirty. So at this time, I'm at the table watching TV. But right behind the TV, I can see their cell. And I don't know if everybody else in the unit knows what's about to happen, but I do. So I'm just sitting there watching TV and observing. And I see Razor, Dirty, with a couple other Texas MA in a room in 104 or 105. They're all powwowed in the cell. I don't have to be there in that conversation. I already know what it is. All they're doing in there in that cell is talking about the strategy and how to handle the business. So when the door opens, everybody comes out, and I see Razor and Dirty go up the stairs. They go up the stairs, hit the corner, and go right directly into the cell. Razor opens the door, Dirty goes in, Razor goes behind him, and they close the door. And for the first 30 seconds, all you hear is the shuffling, the noise. Pop, 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 pop. When you have people scuffling in a cell, they're hitting the wall, they're hitting the floor. It's noisy. Then about a minute into it, you can hear a G-gun screaming, "Officer, help! Officer, help! Officer, help!" And you hear somebody else, "Shut the fuck up!" And they're just beating the brakes off of them in there. So the COs run up there, they hit the deuces, they run up there, they go to the cell, and they drag, security or whatever, pull the two dudes out, and then they pull G-gun out. G-gun comes out, he's busted up, leaking, whatever, right? And then that's that. Well, after the incident, they locked us down, but the incident wasn't like a racial war or a tension with another car, so they knew that the incident was confined to this issue, and they opened the yard back up. So we weren't locked down for maybe just an hour or something for them to clean up the mess, secure the cell, and all that. So when we come out, we're all in my cell. We all up in my cell. It was me, Rudy, a couple of other of my smoke buddies, and one of the guys that came down there was my friend Rick. His name's Rick Turner. And I'm using this episode to usher in his story. So for the next week coming up, I'm gonna focus on Rick Turner and his story. But when he came downstairs and we were talking, because at this time, Rick had heard that he might be going back to court. He's only been there a few months at this particular time. And, he just got sentenced to 40 years in prison. This guy's never been in trouble in his life. But he ended up things happen in his life, and he ended up getting himself caught up and got a 40-year sentence. Well, while we were in the room, we were talking, and Rick's like, "Man, I didn't even know somebody was getting killed next to me," because where he lived, on the right side is a couple. When I mean a couple is, there's this guy that calls himself Caressa. When I say, "Hey, Carissa," he's like, "No, it's Caressa." Like, Caressa. I was like, all right, whatever, right? But his last name is Hernandez. Like, from every account that I knew of him, that I've heard of him, they're like, "Nah, that dude go." They've seen this dude chop dudes up. They've seen this dude cut people up. By all account, dude's a gangster, but somewhere along the line, he got turned out and wanted to be a girl, and now is pumped full of hormones to get breasts and all sorts of stuff. Well, anyway, he's got a dude. He's Puerto Rican, but his dude is New York. A dude from New York. I forgot his name or whatever, but so Rick lives next door to him. So every night he hears them going at it, or during the day or whatever, and he's just like, especially during count time, where he can't leave his cell. He's stuck in there next door to this couple. So he always finds himself putting his pillow over his ear and trying to drown out the sound in his, in the pillow, in the mattress. So when this thing happened, when he started hearing the scuffling next door, Rick thought that these two dudes were humping, So he's like, man, what the hell? And he put his pillow over his head, and he just waited for them to finish. But then when the dude started screaming, "Officer, help! Officer, help!" that snapped him up and got him out of his bunk. And he was like, "What the fuck?" So, during the time it was going on, I told you Rick was next door. He opened his door, looked into the other cell, went right back in his cell and closed his door. The reason I'm mentioning Rick Turner is just, like I said, he's never been in trouble. This is his first time being exposed to this environment. He's a nonviolent drug offender, first time nonviolent drug offender, but was given 40 years and was sentenced to the USP. And now this is his new reality. And what he was experiencing at this time, play a psychological effect on him that's going to lead him to what I'm going to share with you guys for the rest of this week. Thank you. Welcome to the USP.